Last night, the Trump administration faced another example of judicial overreach. Using his full and proper legal authority, President Trump imposed universal tariffs and reciprocal tariffs on Liberation Day to address the extraordinary threat to our national security and economy posed by large and persistent annual U.S. goods trade deficits. The United States has run a trade deficit of goods every year since 1975. In 2024, our trade deficit in goods exceeded $1 trillion. Everybody agrees this is unacceptable. President Trump is delivering on his promise to fix this problem, and he has taken a long overdue and much needed bold stance for American workers after decades of our manufacturing base being hollowed out. The president's rationale for imposing these powerful tariffs was legally sound and grounded in common sense. President Trump correctly believes that America cannot function safely long-term if we are unable to scale advanced domestic manufacturing capacity, have our own secure critical supply chains, and our defense industrial base is dependent on foreign adversaries. 3 judges of the U.S. Court of International Trade disagreed and brazenly abused their judicial power to usurp the authority of President Trump to stop him from carrying out the mandate that the American people gave him. These judges failed to acknowledge that the President of the United States has core foreign affairs powers and authority given to him by Congress to protect the United States economy and national security. Congress had created the National Emergency Act to provide the congressional framework to strike down improper IEEPA use, and any questions over whether President Trump improperly imposed these IEEPA tariffs were already adjudicated in Congress following Liberation Day. Congress firmly rejected an effort led by Senator Rand Paul and Democrats to terminate the president's reciprocal tariffs. The courts should have no role here. There is a troubling and dangerous trend of unelected judges inserting themselves into the presidential decision-making process. America cannot function if President Trump, or any other president for that matter, has their sensitive diplomatic or trade negotiations railroaded by activist judges. President Trump is in the process of rebalancing America's trading agreements with the entire world, bringing tens of billions of dollars in tariff revenues to our country, and finally ending the United States of America from being ripped off. These judges are threatening to undermine the credibility of the United States on the world stage. The administration has already filed an emergency motion for a stay pending appeal and an immediate administrative stay to strike down this egregious decision. But ultimately, the Supreme Court must put an end to this for the sake of our Constitution and our country. President or Special Envoy Witkoff.
On tariffs, Kevin Hassett earlier this morning, he brushed off the legal ruling, called it a hiccup, and he said that trade deal negotiations would continue. Why would other countries continue these trade deal negotiations given the ruling?
Because other countries around the world have faith in the negotiator-in-chief, President Donald J. Trump. And they also probably see how ridiculous this ruling is, and they understand that the administration is going to win, and we intend to win. We already filed an emergency appeal. We expect to fight this battle all the way to the Supreme Court. These other countries should also know, and they do know, that the president reserves other tariff authorities, Section 232, for example, to ensure that America's interests are being restored around the world. But I can confirm that our ambassador for trade, Jamison Greer, already heard from countries around the world this morning who said they intend to continue with these negotiations. Peter.
Thank you, Caroline. So many of the president's plans right now are being blocked by courts. If the courts are going to be the ones who are shaping policy, does the president wish he would have just become a judge instead?
I think the president would take this job over being a judge, and certainly the president is acting within his authority. He wishes judges would do the same.
But so the courts are basically telling you guys they think that the White House's policies, the president's policies, are in some way against the law. So why can't President Trump ask the Republicans that control the House and the Republicans that control the Senate just to make a new law?
Well, these laws have already been granted to the president by the Constitution and by laws that have been previously passed. I'll give you another example. For instance, we've been blocked in court for the revocation of visas from individuals who have the privilege of studying in the United States of America. Secretary of State Rubio has simply used his authority to revoke those visas, to revoke that privilege, and we've seen the courts try to block that. So if these judges want to be the Secretary of State or they want to be the president, they can run for office themselves. It should be the other way around. But all of the actions the president has taken rely on legal authorities that have already been granted to him by our nation's existing laws. I mean, it's not a comment. Rachel.
Thanks, Caroline. Back on trade, I know you said the White House is going to fight this ruling in court. Is the administration actively reviewing other avenues, other options to carry out the president's trade policy?
The president's trade policy will continue. We will comply with the court orders, but yes, the president has other legal authorities where he can implement tariffs. However, it does not dispute the fact that the president was right to declare a national emergency when it came to fentanyl and when it came to our crippling deficits and the lack of critical supply chains here at home. That is the reasoning for the president's tariffs. And the court didn't dispute those facts, by the way. And there have been other courts that have reaffirmed the president's position. In fact, a ruling in federal court earlier this month shows that the administration is in the right, said we will win on appeal. A federal district judge in Florida ruled that IEEPA, in fact, does grant the president the authority to unilaterally impose tariffs. And 20 years ago, I will add, they are not a court, the New York Times editorial board responded to the January 2005 trade deficit of $58.3 billion by writing an editorial entitled Dangerous Deficits. And since then, our trade deficit has more than doubled. The U.S. trade deficit in January totaled a whopping $131.4 billion. So people on both sides of the aisle, pundits, lawyers, legal scholars, politicians have all agreed that it is a national emergency, our trade deficits and our lack of critical supply chains here at home. It's just President Trump was the first president to actually act on it, to restore that wealth and that prosperity to the United States of America. And it's very unfortunate that the courts are now blocking his attempts to do that.
Has the administration then reached the point where you are actually asking your economic advisors to start reviewing other avenues to implement the president's trade policy, or do you want to just see this legal process take place for now?
We can walk and chew gum at the same time. We are doing both.
Thank you, Caroline. Many small businesses that we've talked to since the tariffs have been in place have said what would really help them is a long-term plan so that they can catch up. In light of what's happened now, this trade war with the courts, how will that impact this 90-day window? Will you guys be adjusting that? And how can you help relieve some of these small businesses?
Well, I would say nobody understands the needs of business owners, and nobody has the backs of our small business community more than President Donald J. Trump. He believes, I've heard him talk about this with small business owners himself, that small businesses are truly the backbone of our American economy. And that's why the president is supporting the One Big Beautiful Bill. So for those you spoke to who are asking for a long-term plan, big tax cuts are coming their way. No tax on tips, no tax on overtime for their workers, more money in their pockets. Their bottom lines will be larger. They can pay their people more. Wages are going to go up. Inflation will continue to come down. We've already seen energy prices plummeting as a result of this president's economic and energy agenda that he has been implementing across the federal government, reducing burdensome regulation. All of that is good news for small business owners across the country. That's why they strongly support the president, and that's the Trump economic plan that is underway. And again, you're emphasizing, I believe, the need to pass the One Big Beautiful Bill, and the president wants to see that happen. Sure.
Will you still work within that 90-day window for these trade negotiations? Does that still stand?
Again, as far as we're concerned, our trade agenda is moving forward, and we've already heard from countries around the world today who will continue to negotiate in good faith with the United States so we can cut good trade deals on behalf of the American people, and we fully expect to win this case in court. Sure. Sure, go ahead.
Yes, I wanted to ask you about, has the president spoken to any of these foreign leaders about these agreements that have been reached, specifically the case of the United Kingdom that already has an agreement in place after this decision of the court in New York?
Has the president talked to foreign leaders about what?
About the court decision in New York.
Which court decision in New York?
The trade court.
Oh, the trade court decision. He did speak to the leader of Japan this morning, and he said that was a very good call and a good discussion. And as I said, the president's cabinet, Secretary Lutnick, Secretary Bessent, and Ambassador Jameson Greer have all been in touch with their counterparts in countries around the world to let them know the United States will still be at the negotiating table, and we still expect countries around the world to treat us fairly. Again, I will just close by saying that how ridiculous it is that we have been ripped off. Our middle class has been hollowed out. Our manufacturing base has left and gone overseas. Jobs have been offshored. And now no court did anything about that. No court did anything about hundreds of thousands of people being put out of work, about thousands of factories being closed down, about our deficits going to dangerous levels, as the New York Times has said. But now a court is trying to stop a president from trying to correct those wrongs of the past. And this administration will continue to do that. It's a promise the president made to the American people, and it's a promise they elected him on. We will win this battle in court, and the president will implement his America First trade policies. Thank you, everyone.